The Hornets ran back up this weekend, and it has us thinking, how did we get here to this low point again? We'll share our thoughts on that. Plus, Doug has some tournament thoughts on Locked On Hornets today.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free. We're available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. There's Doug Branson. He's back again. Every Hornets Boxscore.com. That's where you can find his work. I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. I saw a YouTube comment yesterday where I think about it every single time for a millisecond when I say that. You can listen to me on WFNZ every day from 12 to 3. There's somebody on the YouTube comment section, and it got a couple of likes where they want me to just rap it. They said, Walker, I'm begging you, just give me a rap. And I think about it for about a millisecond every time I go through the read because it does rhyme a few times.
But only a millisecond.
Only a millisecond, and then I move on. So maybe I can create a rap a little bit later. And I don't know if you guys want to hear that anyway, but maybe I think about it.
Not with that kind of confidence.
Leaky confidence. It's very leaky. There's no doubt. Maybe I think I don't
Leaky
know.
Black.
Well, Speaking of leaky black confidence, that doesn't sound very good. Speaking of leaky confidence, if we go into the next couple of road games with the Charlotte Hornets team, I think it's at not an all-time low because we've been here before, Doug, but it has us thinking, how do we get back here, right? Before we started recording, trying to figure out the content for today, I'd expressed to you, well, I was thinking, are we at rock bottom again? And it's a cliche radio topic. Are we at rock bottom? Whatever, is this the worst, right? Like, not even so much that combo. I just want to have the conversation of, it's not a roller coaster, because if it was a roller coaster, it would be on the lowest plane and just continuing to be on that low plane until we hit a 5-game winning streak after the trade deadline. And that was a fun rise. Like, it's not necessarily like you're riding Space Mountain going very far up, but maybe it's just like the best ride at the carnival. Not going to compete with Disney World, but it's still a pretty cool ride up to the top of whatever that was. And then you come crashing back down. How did we get back here? Because now it feels like we are close to matching whatever apathy that we had before the trade deadline, because it feels that way to me once again here with like 15 or so games left in the season.
Well, I think that, when they did the moves at the trade deadline, it brought a lot of energy and excitement, and particularly the kinds of players they brought back, players that were looking for an opportunity to play, who had been buried on their team's roster, everybody but really Grant Williams. And Grant Williams was just looking for an opportunity to come back home and not be maligned by his fan base. I mean, like the Mavs fans.
His players, his teammates. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody hated Grant for some reason. I love Grant. I think he's doing great. So there was that energy and excitement, and it just got over everything. And so I think that it was not like entirely unexpected that they would get that bump, right? But then it's not entirely unexpected that there would be some regression to the mean after that some teams would quickly figure out, okay, they've got a brand new bench. How do we attack this? On top of that, you had two more players go out to injury, Cody Martin and Seth Curry. And I would say that those two injuries in particular hurt the Hornets because they were without LaMelo Ball. And the reason I say that is this. If you look at the assist percentage for Seth Curry just while he was with the Hornets, and for Cody Martin really his entire time, because he's been playing like backup emergency point guard minutes a lot since his return, those two guys were essential to moving the basketball and making this team competent on offense. They were already improving on defense, but they made that team competent and confident on the offensive end because they could move the basketball and make the right play. And you pluck those two guys out of the lineup, and it was like if you were to say, how do I break the Hornets, this current non-LaMelo Mark version of the Hornets, how do I break that team? Take the two guys who are moving the basketball out, and you make them an awful, awful offensive team, and that's what we've seen.
Yeah, injuries are a part of it again. And so we're going through this vicious cycle that is the injury bug that hit us last year, that hit us in the first part of this season, and then when the roster changed, it hit us again. And just to be clear, it wasn't a 5-game winning streak. It was 5 out of 6 games that they won with a loss on the road to Golden State in there. But I look at all those wins, and I said it at the time, Doug, I didn't realize just how much of an effect the lack of strength of schedule at that time had on the Hornets because they're scoring in the 100s every single game except for that 93-80 win in Portland, which we were, speaking of maligned, like we were kind of maligned for telling you it was a hard watch and maybe this is what we should expect, at least something close to this moving forward. But they beat Memphis, who is the only team with worse injury luck than the Hornets, and it's a lot worse, by the way. I saw you tweet about it. What was your tweet on the Memphis Grizzlies injury report, Doug?
Well, that the Hornets are injured, but they are not having to ask the NBA for multiple hardship roster positions injured. That is nuts. Right. You have to go to Adam Silver and say, "Hey, buddy, Adam, we're going to need an extra roster spot." Why? Because we literally do not have enough players to compete in an NBA game. That's crazy. I really don't even know what to do with that because the Hornets, don't even want to use their roster spots. They have an extra roster spot just hanging around. They don't even need a hardship spot.
No, they don't. And so that's a huge difference. And we reacted crazily because it was something we hadn't seen in a while. A win where you go 115 and beat the Grizzlies 106. That was fantastic. And then you get another one. And then that win against Indiana, it was against a better team. It was when they were pretty healthy. But we also have to remember that Indiana's defense was historically bad around that time. Atlanta, great win, double-digit victory, 122-99, and then you beat Utah after what is a long time rest because that was right after the All-Star break, and Utah had just sold all of their, not all, but a lot of their pieces. They were trying to get worse. Like the strength of schedule at that time, it was perfect for the Hornets that were looking to do something different because the loss before that against the Bucks, that was a perfect storm of having traded all the players so you didn't have them on the squad, and you had not had the players on your roster that you traded for yet, and so you got destroyed by Milwaukee, and then you had such an easy 5-game, 6-game schedule, and now it's bad again because of injuries and because of, the teams are a little bit harder to play right now.
I mean, yeah, it's bad because they're losing and no one likes to lose. But apart from the back half of the first quarter and the second quarter of the last game, this team has competed. They're just fundamentally not built to win games against the level of competition that they are playing right now, and honestly that they are going to continue to play for the rest of the season. They've got a tough slate. I mean, there's just no way around it. I don't see, and that's good news, by the way, if you're a Tankanista and are looking at the Tankathon, odds for the Hornets to get the number 1 pick. That only helps them. But what you want to see the rest of the season, I just think it's all about changing your expectations. If you don't want to feel down bad about the Hornets, then you've got to change your expectations from wanting to see the W after the game is over to just wanting to see this team compete hard for 4 quarters and attempt to make the right play most of the time. Because without having multiple players who you can depend on for playmaking other than Vasa, they don't have that. That's why I'm saying, the Cody and the Seth thing were such big injuries, even though there's kind of players that you wouldn't look at and go, oh, yeah, if you miss them, that's going to be a huge loss. It is for this team. And so they're not going to make the right call every time. It's why, look, watching Miles Bridges has been difficult, Walker, but I try to be careful when I come on and talk about that to not lambast him too hard because it's you don't have enough guys that can handle the ball and make plays where Miles would feel comfortable saying, all right, every possession I'm just going to be playing within the flow of the offense and have plays made for me. So, I try to be a little bit fair in this situation, but but you just want to see them come out and compete hard and try to play the right way, and then get out, get into the offseason, get everybody healthy, and then hope for the best next season.
And I shouldn't say that it's at the same level of apathy that it was beforehand. That's not true. That's not true. It's bad, but
people are tired.
It's
fatigue. I wouldn't say apathy. I would say fatigue. People are just fatigued at this point. And so that's why I'm saying, when you're fatigued like that, just reset the expectations and look for them to compete quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4. And might not come out with the win, but you come out with building something for the future.
Let's move on and get to some people that are not apathetic at all about LaMelo discourse. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
We have LaMelo trade comments. We are going to dive, maybe even dumpster dive into the YouTube comment section with everything that everybody had to say about LaMelo. You got a lot. There were, but you also, instead of just picking 5 or 7, you went through a lot and brought them to the forefront. So I drank
from the cup of darkness. When you go to the YouTube comments on a show like that in particular, where the headline, we put the headline on there, we put the thing, and it just brought out a lot. So yeah, I drank from it, and I will vomit it up again in the next segment.
And we knew what the title was going to be. Should the Hornets trade LaMelo? That's the main topic of discussion. I don't know how else to put another title up there. And we put it up there, and as soon as you posted it, we're going to get about 70 comments in 5 minutes. That's about to happen, and nobody's going to watch one single second of the video before they comment. Let's move on. That'll be next on Locked On Hornets. Before we go through all of those comments, I want to tell you that this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and then you can watch the winnings roll in. It's demon time, too, on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money, 100 times your money. With as little as 4 correct picks, you can turn $10 into $1,000. Demons and goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. You can now win up to, 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. More Locked On Hornets ahead. Before we put on our scuba gear and go diving into these comments, Doug, what do you want to see in the next 2 road games after what was a pretty long rest, probably the longest rest that they've had since the All-Star break?
Yeah, they've got Atlanta coming up. That was the last and one of the few blowout wins they've had this season. So you would like to – I know I just spent a whole segment talking about resetting expectations, but you would like to see them coming out with a W in this one. Especially off of all that rest. And I think that last loss was good and informative for the team because that came off of a couple of days rest. And so, they came out kind of flat in that one. You would hope that after that and the way they played in the second half, which was much, much better, that they've learned that lesson and won't come out flat against Atlanta. 2 things. I would like to see more Hornets. I mean, that's kind of the obvious thing. I would love to see someone come off the injury list. We haven't gotten any updates, unfortunately, in that area, and I don't expect any good updates. But after 3 or 4 days of not seeing the Hornets, you would love for someone to surprise us and rejoin the team. But apart from that, I'll say one little thing, one micro thing that I'm watching is Brandon Miller, his discipline, especially early in the game in terms of foul trouble. I think he spent the past couple of games in foul trouble early on, getting 2 quickies in the first quarter. And that just for a young player particularly, I think takes you out of rhythm. And so Brandon Miller, stay out of foul trouble. I know he wants to, and all of the fouls come from less frustration and more him just wanting to do so much to help this team. But you help this team by being available and not being taken out because you've got 2 fouls. So if they need to be in a good place early in the game, it's got to be with Brandon Miller playing, so stay out of foul trouble.
Yeah, can Brandon Miller find his shot again? He's been cold, so I just want to see the ball go through the hoop for Brandon. And also Vasa Micic. It feels like, Doug, we started the narrative, we started the trend of Vasa Micic for Eastern Conference Rookie of the Month. I have seen that a lot more since we dropped the episode. People are watching. I want Vasa to hold on for about 5 more games. You have a game March 23rd, 25th, 27th, 29th, 31st before you get to April. So we're talking about 5 more games. Can you hold on and win this Rookie of the Month award, which right now his numbers are certainly good enough to win it. Like, this is a real thing. It's a joke, but it's a real thing, too.
Totally. And can we see a bounce back of his assist numbers? Like, I love the 20-point, 25-point games from Vasa. They're necessary. I'm not going to complain about it again, for a team that really is struggling offensively. You got to really have everyone putting the ball in the hoop. But I would love to see a 20-6 game from Vasa instead of a 20-2 game.
I wish I had goggles to put on for this next segment. I really want to go through the theme of diving in the dumpster for all of the comments in our YouTube section. What do you have for us, Doug? Because you got a lot. I don't know which ones you want to read first, which ones you thought were the funniest, the meanest, the happiest, whatever you want to roll with. What you got?
Well, I don't think goggles are going to help you. This is the Simpsons meme. The goggles, they do nothing. You are jumping into the acid pit here. The goggles will be the only thing that survives.
Radioactive. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah. So I am going to start, I think, with a comment that goes in depth a little bit. I like this comment. There was a lot of sense being made here, and this is gonna be a tough one. At Sakthicky 5036. I don't know. It's a lot. So I don't even know where to begin with saying that username. He or she says, I do not care that LaMelo has been hurt. You cannot trade away a dude who is easily a top 10 point guard in the league when he's healthy with upside to be top 5. I get the best ability is availability, but it's way too early to move off a guy that increases our winning percentage tenfold when he's on the court. When LaMelo plays, we almost never get blown out. We are consistently among the top clutch teams in the NBA, and we are fun AF to watch. Also, who are you getting that is remotely on LaMelo's level? Don't tell me draft picks, because this franchise's sole top pick that was a slam dunk hit outside of the top 5 was Kemba Walker in the last decade. They tripped and fell into LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. Please don't screw that up. I mean, there it is. I think that is the manifesto for not trading LaMelo Ball right there, Walker.
Well, yeah, I like it. I totally agree with the spirit of the comment. There are clearly issues. I mean, I think you're underestimating the Hornets' ability to get blown out, even with LaMelo on the floor. This team will drop a dud, even with LaMelo out there. But you are right. If you look at the numbers, man, go back to last year. LaMelo offensively made a world of difference with this team. This squad was actually good offensively last year when he was on the court, and they were terrible without him. Easy to see. Don't need to point you to the advanced metric sites to tell you that LaMelo makes a huge difference. Certainly offensively, you can see it happen again. So the last couple of years, it's made a huge difference. I'm totally with the spirit of that question or that comment. Like, I don't want to trade him either. Has too much talent. He's a legit star in this league. I'm not trading him.
Yeah, I just think that there's a canyon-level gulf between the two sides here. And I would say, based on our comments, it's overwhelmingly in the camp of don't trade LaMelo. There were a lot more words and ideas expended on the idea of don't trade LaMelo. But really, even though there are a lot of words and there are a lot of good defenses of not trading LaMelo, there's still a canyon's size gulf between the two sides, because on the other side is, yeah, but he doesn't play. Like, you can give me all of the on-off statistics that you want. You can give me offensive rating, with the Hornets when he's not on the floor and when he is on the floor. All that's great. You can show me all of the amazing highlights of LaMelo Ball hitting deep threes and physics bending passes. All of that's great. But he doesn't play. And I like some of the comments about the Steph Curry comparisons that we keep making. And Steph Curry, even early in his first 4 years of his career, played a lot more games, just bottom line, played more games than LaMelo Ball has. And so that's where, you're not going to find one thing to say that like bridges that canyon. Because one side is saying, well, he's not playing, and the other side says, yeah, but when he does play, look at the results.
Well, the way to bridge it is if it happens again next year, because then I'll give that a lot more thought. If it happens again where he plays 30-something games, then okay,
How long are we going to keep doing that, right? Because he's up, because his contract is not next year and then it's up, right? His contract is for the next 5 years. So I think while I think that's a reasonable sentiment, I also think that if he does get hurt again next season, there will be people who go, okay, but it's just the first year of the max contract. Let's just see what happens next season.
There has to be a line. No, for sure. But like I'm telling you, at least personally, where my line is at 3 straight seasons of injured basketball, you don't even get to 40 games. At that point, I'll give in and listen to that conversation a lot more, to the point where maybe I even carry it out.
All right, I got a couple comments here from people who just really thought we were idiots for having the conversation. That was the other.
Right.
There were a couple of, I would say, blocks of comments. There were the people that were saying you absolutely cannot trade LaMelo. There were people that were saying no, you have to explore all options with LaMelo because of the injuries. And then you had this other block of comments that were, these two guys are idiots for even starting this conversation, for even mentioning
They didn't like the graphic. They saw the graphic and they started typing. Should the Hornets trade? Boom. Stupid. Love it.
One is from @the Devin Martin. What a blatant lack of respect for the team's star player. I'd expect this out of the national media, but not the team's Locked On podcast. You guys should defend LaMelo, not entertain these moronic ideas. This next comment coming from @JamWill1582. This topic really excited Walker. He's been ready to get rid of LaMelo. They got rid of his BFF coach Borrego, Graham, and of course, Hayward. What say you to those comments?
Why, of course, Gordon Hayward.
Well, there was another comment. Let me just say this. There was another comment that I didn't have here in the rundown, but essentially the comment was, these two have been willing to be patient with Gordon Hayward, but they're not willing to be patient with LaMelo Ball.
Which is okay to not. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, which is like a totally great read on this podcast. Yeah, we have not been frustrated at all or given up at all on the idea of Gordon Hayward. Like, please. I
defended keeping LaMelo that whole show. I did get passionate about keeping LaMelo. They just didn't listen. There's one thing. There's actually only one thing that Jam Will got right in that whole thing. I was worried about trading Graham. I was worried about losing that passing, and I did give credence to the idea of getting a first-round pick, but I did think that they were going to hurt without the passing of Devontae, and that was a worthwhile trade. So that's the one thing you got right. Of course, Gordon Hayward is the best part, because let's just say I'm extra shiny on this camera today because of the light and the way it reflects off of my very pale skin. So I'm guessing that had something to do with it.
What are you talking about?
Because when you're tall and lanky and also white and shiny, that might be the of course part of the Gordon Hayward comment.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're back to the Devin Martin's comments. We're not national media. We do cover this team, I think, in a different way, in that we put the microscope on both the good things. We can talk about the good things that happen with the Charlotte Hornets because we're actually paying attention, whereas a lot of national media are busy paying attention to all of the teams that are in contention, and so they won't even know to talk about the good things that are happening in Charlotte. So of course we're going to do that, but we also will shine a light on some of the issues that this team has. So just because it has Locked On Hornets on the name of the podcast doesn't mean that we are not in any way affiliated with the team. So we're just going to call balls and strikes like we see them. I would say that I'm not in the camp of entertaining trades for LaMelo at this point. I think that even though I was laying out some arguments in the last show for that, in my heart of hearts, I think that the Hornets really have no choice but to see this out, both from the perspective of I think it's going to be difficult to trade a player with this kind of injury history, but difficult to trade in the sense of getting the value that you have for that player. Like the Hornets obviously think that LaMelo has all NBA potential, but they're not going to be able to get a package back that represents that potential until he actually lives up to that potential. But also from the perspective of the fact that the Charlotte Hornets as a franchise needs star power, and he represents an opportunity to get that. So, but I don't think that the idea of trading him is moronic. I think they have to.
Trash. Right. Disrespectful. Trash. Stupid. Terrible podcast.
No. Now, certainly if he had gotten a second All-Star bid or he had played, 60 games the past couple of seasons, then yeah, it would actually, it would play into this whole idea that like, well, the minute a star is born in Charlotte or Milwaukee or San Antonio, that ESPN's going to get on and say, well, how do we get that player to the Knicks? Here's the thing. I would love for Charlotte to have that problem. I would love to be on this podcast complaining about the fact that, all of these folks on ESPN are saying, well, trade LaMelo to New York or LA. They're not even having that conversation. You know why they're not having that conversation? Because LaMelo Ball is not on the court. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I want that conversation to be moronic, the Devin Martin. Unfortunately, it's not.
I don't know if you got the joke, though. I was being the YouTube commenter co-host where I was just saying trash, stupid podcast, terrible idea. It seemed like you were like, yeah, no, yeah. And then you went on. It felt like you thought that was me making a real point, actually trying to provide insight onto what you were talking about. And I want you to know that it's not how I would address anything that you ever say.
Sorry.
I just want you to know that was not me. That was me emulating a YouTube commenter. Let's move on, shall we? One more segment to go. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
I was on a roll. I apologize.
You're okay. We have more comments to get through, though. Like, we have a lot more that you've collected, and maybe we get to those on the other side of the break, and also get rapid fire tournament thoughts from Doug Branson in the last segment. Before we break all of that down, I want to tell you this episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts, for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. More Locked On Hornets ahead.
All right, so we do have a few more comments on this LaMelo Ball episode to get to, and I want to throw this one to you, Walker, and let you cook because you are the Panthers expert here, and we've got someone that is blending Panthers misery and Hornets misery here. News 7773 writes, Christian McCaffrey left the Panthers as an injury-prone player and magically became durable in a larger market. Perhaps being on a team willing to shut him down seasonally is not the correct place to be for star players. They save them for next year every year. So what do you think about that, Walker, the idea that the McCaffrey and LaMelo connection here?
Yeah, I have done many pods, have done many segments on the way that the Panthers handled Christian McCaffrey. It was pretty terribly, and it was across a couple of different coaching regimes. Like, it didn't matter whether it was Ron Rivera or Matt Rule. They ran him into the ground. And so it wasn't because they were willing to shut Christian McCaffrey down by any stretch of the imagination. They kept rolling with him. And with McCaffrey, he wanted to get back out there on the field no matter what was happening. And Matt Rule and Ron Rivera and the coaching staff, training staff, they all let him. So the fact that McCaffrey was playing like 90% of the snaps at a running back position, which is pretty ridiculous, and they didn't hold him out and rest him, that was the issue there. Now, some of it's just plain old dumb luck. He goes to San Francisco and he has a better offensive line. Maybe that's not so dumb luck. Kyle Shanahan gets him in space a little more. Not so dumb luck there either. But all of those attribute to him being a healthier football player. Whereas with LaMelo, the question I think is, are the Hornets, holding him back? Like, I don't think that's what's happening. I don't think that they're holding him back, but I would much prefer holding your star player back because you're extra cautious with him, rather than do what the Panthers did by throwing him out there just because you think maybe, just maybe, he's 80%, 60%, and still 60% of your star player is good enough to compete and help you win. That's how the Panthers operated every single snap of a football game. So if I were to have to choose, I would choose the way the Hornets are operating right now, especially, again, not even a play-in bound season.
Oh, listen, I absolutely think the Hornets are being careful with LaMelo Ball's injury precisely because he's about to be on a max contract. I think this situation would be totally different if he were in year 2 of his max contract. I think there would be so much more pressure, and there will be more pressure in the years to come for him to get out there and play through whatever ailments he is dealing with. Because I think if Steve Clifford had his druthers, this is what I think, that LaMelo would be out there and playing right now. Like against Atlanta, LaMelo would be playing. But I think the franchise is being careful because they do see this max contract coming up, and they want to make sure that they're giving that star, that they don't make the McCaffrey mistake, that they're giving that star player every opportunity to live up to that max contract, beginning in that max contract, and especially not in a season where the wins and losses aren't really mattering anymore.
Yeah. Any other comments you want to get to before attorney thoughts?
Okay, so there is one more block of comments, this block of comments. Look, you know what I did? I used some fancy, I used some AI, some geolocation technology, and I've been able to identify that these comments about trading LaMelo Ball, advocating for the trade of LaMelo Ball, they are coming from the Pacific time zone. Specifically, they're coming from Los Angeles. Don't listen. It's secret. It's top secret technology that I'm using here. I can't reveal my secrets, but I'm just telling you I know these are from LA. So this is from Old Ted 2 saying, I think LaMelo and his camp want to be traded. That's why he's not rushing back. He got the most money because he signed with his existing team. Now that he got that, he wants out. Let me just tell you, Old Ted 2, he says the before every freeway name, okay? It's the 101. Okay. It's the, I just know this. I'm telling you. At Savage1005 says, trade the bum. Well, Savage drives a luxury car and he lives in a 400 square foot studio apartment. Don't tell me how I know that. I just know that he loves the movie La La Land. Okay? For Sure 331 says, yes, Mark II, trade Mark Williams too, build around Miller, draft another center. Ball is too Hollywood. Well, listen, you for sure live in Hollywood, okay? I know that for a fact, Walker. I know this.
They all want him. They all want him, man. Going back home to the Lakers, despite him not being vocal about wanting to go back home. Never really heard that.
I'm telling you, LaMelo lets the fans speak for him. These people that are climbing into our comments, I'm telling you, they're from LA. This is a psyop. Yep. They pretend to be Hornets fans. They want the best for the franchise, but these folks are from LA.
Attorney thoughts, rapid fire. Did you enjoy Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham's performance going for like a combined, I don't even know how many combined points. I just know Reed Shepherd had like 3 points and was absolutely terrible in that game against Oakland.
He is the dead. People are asking me, like, what is staying and clanging? What does clanging mean? Clanging means Reed Shepherd. It's the sound that the ball made every time Reed shot it, and it went side rim. How was that? I mean, how was that game as good as it was offensively and for a college game? I mean, I was stunned watching that Oakland-Kentucky game, how competent the two offenses were when the two. It was
just Reeves and Golke hitting threes, like, because Dillingham and Shepherd were terrible, but it was just Golke and Reeves. And Oakland had some other guys get involved, but a tremendous shooting display specifically from 2 guys.
Well, let's Reed Shepherd. I listened to your podcast yesterday with David and talking about these guys, and I was like, all right, this Reed Shepherd guy, I got to look into this guy, right? I don't start my draft research until about May 15th. Pretty close to the draft time. So I looked into this Reed Shepherd guy. I started watching him play, and I'm like, oh, it's this big dude, right? This 44 for Kentucky. That's got to be a big guy. I saw him hit a 3. I'm like, all right, big guy that shoots. That makes a lot of sense. And there's like, no. Reed Shepherd is the little tiny guy. I'm like, no way. There are roller coasters that this guy is not eligible to ride in these United States. This man cannot be a top 5 pick. That's crazy. And then I watched him clang all those shots in the tourney. I'll tell you what. Walker, here's a turning thought. I think Reed Shepherd, you know what the best thing that he could do right now? If I were his agent, you know what I would tell him to do right now?
What's that?
I would tell him to go tell someone that he's had mono this entire time.
You brought it back out.
Do it. Say, listen, he's got to come up with something. He's got to come up with something, man, because that's going to hurt the draft stock otherwise.
It's a good point. It's a good point. NCAA tournament performance be damned. If you were bad, but you were good for the season,
if you know, you know.
Take a shot
if
on
you
that
know,
guy.
you know.
If you can take a shot on that. All right. That'll do. I can't wait to take a couple of YouTube comments from that statement alone. If they stuck around, would love to hear what they have to say about that one.
By the way, I did a bracket for my baby and just chased her around the house and asked her to pick a color between two colors, and we made a bracket. I kid you not, started 10-0. She was 10-0. I'm telling you, I'm going to take her to Vegas. I'm gonna put her on producer Katie's shoulders, throw a big trench coat around her, and we're going to Vegas, baby. And while we're in Vegas, we'll meet up with Anthony Jefferson 3941, who says absolutely trade him and build around Brandon Miller. Let me tell you what, Anthony Jefferson pays $18 for a slice of Wonder Bread and 2 pieces of avocado because that man is from Los Angeles.
And he knows because he has the software, folks. This is somebody that created the Bees machine. He has the ability to find exactly where you are. And that's the truth. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, including YouTube. Have a great weekend. Hopefully we have a Hornets win to talk about on Monday.